No pretty castles, no damsels in distress, no such thing as Robin Hood. You called? Well, I was wrong then. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Series 8, Episode 3, Robot of Sherwood. Okay, so Series 8, not been the biggest fan of Series 8 so far. I liked Deep Breath, I thought it was a good start, but not perfect, it had its issues. My least favourite of the first stories for a new series Doctor out of all 5 of them. It wasn't bad though, it was good, but I had a few issues with it. And I do think it was the first good story for a Doctor. The only Doctors who don't start off with a good story in their first stories are the fifth, sixth, and seventh Doctors. It's the 80s again. It's always the 80s Doctors. Fives was meh, and six and sevens were bad. Sevens was awful, actually. Um, and it took five. For me, in my opinion, I hate Kinder, and Four to Doomsday wasn't that good, so it took him 4 stories. You could say Seven's one have had a worse run, waiting till 5 stories, but I like Paradise Towers, so it was his second for him. Same for 6, and for the other Doctors, it's usually the first or second anyway. In fact, sometimes they'll even hit a fantastic on their first or second runs. Um, with the 12th Doctor, it was a good start, the good first one, but then into the Dalek Cavern, I thought it was all right. Not that great. Episode 3, Robot of Sherwood. As I mentioned at the end of my Into the Dalek review, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a really fun episode. It's not perfect again, but it's a fun, entertaining episode. The plot of this episode sees the Doctor and Clara travel to late 12th century Nottinghamshire to find and meet Robin Hood, who Clara wants to meet. Yeah, he is a legend, but she still wants to meet him. The Doctor, however, does not think he is real. He thinks he's Robin Hood's made up. So he's very skeptical throughout the majority of the episodes until towards the end when he finds out that Robin Hood is in fact real, or at least in the Doctor Who universe. I don't think you can count Robin Hood as a historical figure in the series. It's a bit like if the Doctor met Merlin, which Battlefield implies he does later on down the line. So it's not really a historical figure story. The last one of those, well, we met Queen Elizabeth I in Day of the Doctor, but the last story to be around a historical figure, I believe, was, well, I think it was the Impossible Astronaut Day of the Moon, with Richard Nixon, and the next one I believe will be Rosa, around Rosa Parks. Um, so there's not many historical celebrity episodes in the Peter Capaldi era. In fact, there are none. Robin Hood is probably the closest you are going to get, and this story is the closest to a historical celebrity episode we're going to get. By the way, Odin does not count, especially as the Odin they do meet is not the actual Odin. This is a fun romp of adventure as the Doctor and Clara meet Robin Hood, but the Sheriff of Nottingham has gotten these knights to pillage villages for gold and to take people as labour workforce, including a ward of an older gentleman whose identity, their real identity, is revealed at the end of the episode. It's quite important to the Robin Hood legend. So the Doctor and Robin Hood go compete with each other and the Sheriff of Nottingham in this in the archery competition, which is part of the Robin Hood legend, to win the golden arrow. Which is, it's odd that the Sheriff of Nottingham would have a golden arrow, an actual golden arrow, for this ceremony when he wants all of the other gold for his plan, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's soon revealed that when Robin Hood and the Doctor exposed themselves, that the knights are robots. They are robot knights working with the Sheriff of Nottingham, and their plan is that they've crashed their spaceship. So they've disguised it as a castle. Not sure what Nottingham Castle's supposed to be in this universe. I'm wondering how the residents of Nottingham feel. In real life, Nottingham Castle existed, but I believe it was destroyed or partially destroyed during the Civil War in the 17th century, and then the ruins of the castle are still there today. Fun fact, I actually have a friend and fellow former Universals member who lives in Nottingham. I shall not reveal their identity, but their YouTube channel is their Doctor Who fan, and they make this great series called What If Doctor Who Wasn't Axed in 1989. Go check it out, and also check out the Universals. Please and thank you. Love you. Anyway, the robot knights need their spaceship to be fixed, and gold is what will power the spaceship. So the Sheriff of Nottingham is collecting all of the gold to help power the spaceship, and the labourer is there to help fix it. The Sheriff then thinks, with the robot knights' help, he will then be able to take over not just the country from Prince John, who is ruling in as in the Robin Hood legends, he's like the acting king. He's like the regent king, like George IV. When Richard the Lionheart, Richard I, went off to fight the Crusades, and then took over when Richard was killed in battle. Funny story about that, actually. Go and watch Horrible Histories. I'm not sure which episode it was, but there's an episode about Richard I's death. But it's a funny story. But anyway, so Prince John is currently ruling in his brother's place. He's basically king, but in all but name, until he does become king again, like George IV during the Georgian era. So the sheriff planned, with the help of the robots, to take over the country and then the world. And the robots want to get to the promised land that the half-faced man wanted to get to. The episode does kind of stop for a few seconds to acknowledge this. However, their capacity is not quite complete, despite their efforts. So that's basically the plot of this story. The Doctor and Robin Hood and Clara have to stop the evil plan and save the citizens of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, and to prevent the Sheriff of Nottingham and the robots from taking over the world. So yeah, this is a fun, entertaining episode. Some flaws I do have with it. Now, I can understand the Doctor believing Robin Hood to be fictional and made up, and getting a bit annoyed that, hang on, this isn't right, what's going on? I don't know, it just feels like he's being a bit of a dick in places. I don't know, maybe this is because of 12's personality, I'm not quite sure. Robin Hood and his men also do a lot of bantering and laughing and jovialism, and it kind of gets on my nerves just as much as it gets on the Doctor's. Now, there is kind of an explanation for that, because Robin's lost Maid Marian, who is, of course, his girlfriend slash lover and later wife in the stories. Because she has disappeared, he has supposedly lost her. He's sad, and underneath he sad inside. So on the outside, he tries to seem happy and jovial. However, sometimes he can go a bit overboard, as can the Merry Men, who are nice to have in the episode. There's even a funny joke about Little John. And they have a nice scene on their own without Robin Hood when he's in the castle with the Doctor. But they don't add an awful lot. It would have been nice to have a bit more of them to do, especially as they then help come to the rescue at the end, but off screen for the most part. Still, it's better than not having them at all. And also, like I said, the story does kind of stop to acknowledge the Promised Land. And yeah, that's really more... Oh, and the Sheriff. The Sheriff, whilst having a fantastic performance by Ben Miller, who, fun fact, would go on to play Prince John in a very similar fashion in a episode of Horrible Histories a year later. Despite his fantastic performance in this episode, the villain is a bit of a typical shouty, angry, wants to rule the world villain. He's calm earlier on for the most part. He's kind of calm, but then when he's getting more passionate, he gets a bit more emotional, and it's a bit more angry when he's talking to Clara. But Ben Miller, he does a fantastic job in the role of the Sheriff of Nottingham. Unfortunately, the sheriff himself as a character could have been a little bit better. I mean, it was fine to start with. He was pretty good to start with, but later on, he kind of just became a typical villain. There's actually a twist about the character that would have been in the final episode, the broadcast episode. However, due to unfortunate circumstances in real life, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, it was cut from the episode. More on that in a moment. I do think, is it Tom Riley, I believe, as Robin Hood? He does a great performance as Robin Hood. He's really great. Also, fun fact, when the Doctor's showing Robin Hood about the legends of him, the tales and stuff, we get one picture from a television production of Robin Hood. The rest are drawn pictures from stories or illustrations. There's one picture from a TV production and one reference to a film production, with actor Errol Flynn for the latter. The television production, however, is of Patrick Troughton in his first television role as Robin Hood. So that is a lovely Easter egg to fans of the show, that Patrick Troughton gets to make an appearance in this episode, not as the Doctor, but as Robin Hood. Also, if you get the Doctor Who, The Power of the Daleks special edition DVD and Blu-ray, you'll get some of his earliest surviving episode of Robin Hood. It's only, I believe the episodes were probably about half an hour each, or 25 minutes, or 20 minutes, and there's only about 8 or 9 minutes of the episode surviving, and there's not much of it, and Robin Hood's not in it as much, and it's a bit... it's not as easy to tell it's Patrick Troughton, but it's a nice little extra on the DVD and Blu-ray to do. So if you've got the special edition of the Power of the Daleks DVD and Blu-ray, do check that out, as it's on disc free. It's a bonus feature. Totally recommend it. It's only 8 or 9 minutes. It's a bit difficult to tell what's going on, but it's worth a watch. So that was a nice Easter egg. The ending of the story is pretty good, with Robin and the sheriff batting each other, and then the robots trying to get into space, but they don't have enough power. So the Doctor, Clara, and Robin share a bow and arrow, shooting the golden arrow into the spaceship so it can get into orbit, so it can then explode. If it didn't get into orbit, it would probably wipe out half the country, as they say. As the Doctor tells of a older guy's Ward, who turns out at the very end to be Maid Marian, who Robin was separated from, let's say. And the Doctor reunites with them, as lets them reunite as a kind of a gift, as a present. A bit like with K9 at the end of School Reunion, a new K9 model being given to Sarah Jane after the previous was destroyed to Mark III, Mark IV's the new one. So it's a nice happy ending, although the bit where the Robin just runs up and shoots an arrow into the sky. I know Robin would do that as a character in all versions, basically, but it just felt a bit odd. But the reunition was lovely. Right, okay. There was one bit during the fight that would have happened in the episode, but didn't. This is what I've heard. During Robin and the Sheriff's fight, Robin would have cut the Sheriff of Nottingham's head off, and it would have gone to the floor. However, the Sheriff would not be dead. It would be revealed he had been turned into a robot, and would be the Robot of Sherwood, hence the episode title Robot of Sherwood, which is in reference to Robin of Sherwood, a TV series that would later see Jason Connery, son of Sean Connery, and a guest actor in the Doctor Who story Vengeance on Varos, take up the lead role from the previous actor who played Robin of Sherwood, Robin Hood, and who would then depart, and then Jason Connery's character would then take over. At least I believe that's the right show. I think I've got the right show. Although he might take up the name Robin Hood, but it wouldn't be the same character as the original Robin of Locksley. It's a bit like the Archer character introduced at the end of Series 3 of the BBC Robin Hood from 2006 to 9, although that series didn't continue after that final season with James Armstrong as Robin Hood. But if they did that, then the Archer character introduced in the final 3 episodes would have been the new Robin Hood, maybe? Or at least the new leader. Anyway, back to this Doctor Who episode. So the Sheriff would have been revealed to be the Robot of Sherwood as opposed to the other robots. Otherwise, it would have to be Robots of Sherwood as opposed to Robot of Sherwood. But the title would make a bit more sense, as it would be the Sheriff they're talking about. And then he would stitch his head back on, and then they would continue to fight until Robin Hood would maneuver out of the way in a similar fashion to when the Doctor did it when they had their little fight earlier on in in the forest, which would then lead the sheriff to fall into the molten pit. However, this part, the part of the head being cut off, the sheriff turning out to be a robot and then sticking it back on, and the exposition. That was about a minute of footage, and to be honest, the episode is about 47 to 48 minutes anyway, so this episode could have been a 50-minute episode, more or less. But it was not cut for time. But around a week before the episode's broadcast, some journalists were from, I believe it was either UK or America or some Western world country. Some journalists were brutally murdered in one of the Middle Eastern countries by terrorists, or I believe by a terrorist regime who murdered them. I believe they were thinking of It was execution, but it was murder. I believe they beheaded the journalists. I don't know why they decided to do it for journalism. Journalists, they decided, maybe they were spies. But as far as we know, they're journalists. They were journalists who were brutally murdered by beheading of this terrorist organization. So, as it was an upsetting thing, this scene was cut from Robot of Sherwood and has not yet been reinstated in the episode or in an extended cut. I was hoping there might be an extended cut of the episode on the complete series Blu-ray. The complete series DVD Blu-ray, by the way, it's a thin version because I've got the BBC Store version with the front TARDIS press the button sound effect, slipcase thing, and the postcards. But I thought the extended cut might be included on the Blu-ray, or maybe as a deleted scene. Maybe it's not been because of respect. I don't know. The TV movie had the scene cut down from about a minute scene cut in respect of the Lockerbie shootings that took place earlier in that year. But it was then had the extended version shown on BBC Two for Doctor Who in 1999, and then on DVD and Blu-ray from 2001 onwards. So maybe in the future we'll get an extended cut of Robot of Sherwood where this scene is back in the episode, or maybe it'll be as a deleted scene. But maybe on the Series 8 Steelbook. Not likely, actually, no, they're just re-releasing the discs. But maybe one day in the future. Maybe it wasn't finalized. Maybe they had to put some of the special effects in as well. And to be honest, it isn't a terribly necessary scene. It just answers the question of the title, but it wouldn't make sense in the fact there was nothing implied that the sheriff was a robot, unless those bits were also cut. So it would make a bit more sense. And maybe some other scenes that were going to be cut anyway, like maybe the Merry Men scene in the forest, could have been included back in or added in to make out the runtime. But then again, like I said, it's already 47 to 48 minutes anyway, so I'm not sure what was added back, if anything was added back in to make up for the lost subplot and revelation scene. It's a tragic event that happened and sadly affected this episode, but ultimately I believe it was the right decision to cut the scene from the episode, and maybe even the whole subplot, if there was anything else cut. Although I would like to see it at some point in the future. I can understand not releasing it out of respect, at least not yet. But it would be nice to maybe see it on a future release later down the line. However, for the actual broadcast, it was the right thing to do. And it also doesn't really deter anything from the episode. Like I said, in fact, story-wise, it may even been an issue in the fact that this comes out of nowhere. It's a last-minute twist. I'm also wondering if the beheading scene would have actually got the episode a 12 rating as opposed to the PG rating it received. So, maybe. Then again, you might be able to get away with beheadings in PGs as of 2014. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, but that doesn't deter from the fun and enjoyability of the story. This is a fun, good story and got some entertaining moments. I also find it funny that the guard chooses Clara as like the leader of this posse. The Doctor, Clara, and Robin. He's taken the leader of this little group for interview sake, and he takes Clara because she's not. Because the Robin and the Doctor are fighting with each other, and also earlier on, she kind of told them to shut up. She doesn't say shut up. Although that does bring me to a kind of niggle I've been having with Series 8 so far, but it's not really an issue with this episode. That the characters are saying shut up quite a lot in this series, and it is kind of getting a bit annoying. This isn't so much an issue with this episode in particular. In fact, this one's probably one that has it the least worst of the first four. But it is being an issue. Anyway, as I was saying, I liked how the guard chose to take Clara to the sheriff. As it's like she was either the quietest, or because she wasn't shouting, she was the lead, or because she was the level-headed one. Um, I thought that was funny. Overall, I think Robots of Sherwood is a fun, entertaining, and enjoyable story. It's not a big story, but it's still quite entertaining. I will be giving it a 8 out of 10. Like I said, not perfect, not exciting, but it's much more entertaining and more fun than the previous two episodes. I thought it was actually quite refreshing. Really, I thought it was quite an entertaining story. The stuff that was cut about the sheriff being a robot, actually, I think would have taken it down a bit unless there was a bit more of that in the story earlier on. And what we got was, it's still a really good episode, so it doesn't really knock down the episode from being removed. Like I said, I believe it was the right thing to do. Though I would like to see that scene at some point in the future, just to see how it would turn out. Heck, even a storyboard would be nice to see. But that's not a complaint, that's more for wishful thinking, wishful hoping. The story itself is fun and enjoyable. Right, that's it from my review of Robot of Sherwood. Thank you for watching. Next time, we will check out Series 8, Episode 4, Listen. A controversial episode, as when it was broadcast, you either loved it or hated it. As for me, I like it, but I don't love it. Yes, you can be somewhere in between. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time for Listen. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel. And so that's, yeah. Odin doesn't count, by the way. So, this is still a, thank you. In all but, and like with the Doctor, it kind of gets on my, and like with the Doctor's nerves, it kind of gets on, and I'll, excuse me. Still, it's better than not having them at all. Or at least, still, it's better than not having them at all. I believe Clara is a pretty good, yeah. In respect of the Domblard. Oh no, Lockerbie. However, in the meantime, it was the. It might even have actually been a issue in the fact that they hadn't actually. In fact, it might even have been. But anyway, but I was like I said, even a storyboard would have been fine. But that's not a complaint. That's a wishful thinking to hopeful wishful thinking to. Right, that's it from Robot of Sherwood. Thank you for watching, and next time we will be talking about. Yes, you can be in the middle. So. You called? Camera position is not right. That's better. You called? Let's do one more take and position it better. There. And we'll get a close up of the wink. Oh, hang on. No pretty castles, no damsels in distress, no such thing as Robin Hood. Impossible. Well, I was wrong then. Stop adjusting to your focus, you stupid.